Last month in a landmark achievement, I also proudly signed the largest working class tax cuts in American history. So the bill that, I'm not going to use the term great, big, beautiful, that was good for getting it approved, but it's not good for explaining to people what it's all about.
Looks like President Donald Trump wants to engage in a bit of a rebrand of the big, beautiful bill. I don't know how you can slap lipstick on a pig more than naming that bill, that monstrosity of a bill, big, beautiful bill. But nonetheless, last week, President Donald Trump admitted that the name that he gave this budget bill and tax cut bill isn't a good descriptor of what it actually does. Now, Republicans are basically squabbling amongst themselves over how to market the quote big beautiful bill, and whether or not they should even stick to that name. Are they taking notes from Democrats? What is this clownish stuff?
Yeah, but you know what? Look, Republicans do this all the time. They rebrand things, right? And a lot of corporate interest to it. So, of course, one of the most famous is when Dick Cheney said, "Oh no, we're not calling it torture anymore. We're calling it enhanced investigations." Interrogations, sorry. Yeah. Enhanced interrogations, right? So, and the list goes on and on of all the things that they have tried. Like, it's not estate tax anymore because estate sounds rich, because it is rich. The estate tax only applies to families that have more than $10 million in assets. No, that's the death tax. Oh, it's so sick of the Democrats to tax people after they die. Those poor millionaires and billionaires.
I would prefer to be taxed the most after I die. Tax me less now.
More later, after I'm dead and I'm not around here.
Yes.
Anyway, so this rebrand stuff. And then they took the Affordable Care Act, and the Republicans are the ones who called it Obamacare. And they thought, aha, we're gonna smear it. And Obama smartly said at the time, oh no, I'm happy with that name. Let's see how it turns out in the long run. Mm-hmm. Well, how it turned out in the long run is that Obamacare survived and then became popular. And so now they're like, I don't know, we don't want to call it Obamacare anymore. Okay, all of a sudden. And in fact, Mitch McConnell, this is a story I tell all the time because it's amazing and no one else ever talks about it. In his second to last re-election efforts, although he was trying to kill Obamacare nationally, the Kentucky version of Obamacare was called Connect, okay, and it somehow had K and Y in it. Anyway, so last 2 weeks of his campaign, he did nothing but running ads about how he's going to protect Connect, the Obamacare in Kentucky.
Wow.
So as long as you call it a different name, it smells sweeter apparently. The rose smells sweeter at that point.
Okay, you've convinced me. You've convinced me that maybe a rebrand is a smart move. But before we get to more of this story, I have to go back to what you mentioned about Dick Cheney, torture, and enhanced interrogations. Wasn't that such a quaint time in American history where like waterboarding was offensive, like was bad? We're breaking international laws. We're committing war crimes. By the way, waterboarding is terrible. I'm not justifying it, but take waterboarding and put it in the context of Gaza right now. That's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, and as I talked about on the show yesterday, I'm super worried about the Israelification of America.
Now, of the globe.
Yeah, now military in the streets, martial law is what we're worried about. Now profiling through AI that they've perfected in Gaza, they now want to use here in America. So super worried about all of our rights. And so, but now back to the big beautiful bill. The only time you want to rebrand is when your original brand sucks, like torture, not a good brand. Blackwater, not a good brand, so they changed it to Z, and then they changed it like 8 other times, so you forgot what it was. Philip Morris became Altria,
yes.
Right? All the things that kill you wind up being like super negative brands. So then they change it to something else in a desperate attempt to make it look better, which leads us back to this bill.
Well, as we all know, before we know it, the midterms will be here, and Republicans are worried, they're scared, and they see the polling in response to the so-called big beautiful bill. That's why they want to do this rebrand, okay? So, as the Bard once wrote, what's in a name? Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know until today after I asked our producer, Taylor Ellis, who produced this story, what the hell does that mean?
That's really funny.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that we admit things like that on air.
Yeah, I'm not gonna pretend like I know things I don't actually know.
So look, Shakespeare was obviously a legend, great for his time and way past that. But are we all still pretending that we understand what he's talking about in those books?
Brett loves Shakespeare.
I know, and good intellectual folks love them some Bard. Yeah. Okay, but anyways, we run a little different here. Go ahead.
Okay, so Republican Senator Mike Crapo? It's Crapo, right?
I mean, of course it's Crapo, but he pretends it's Crapo.
Okay, I'll respect him and call it Crapo. So he stated, quote, "I don't know that the name of the bill is really that definitive about the messaging on it." Representative Andy Biggs, another Republican, says, "I usually refer to it as the BRB, the Budget Reconciliation Bill, but I don't see a problem with its name. More than the name, I think the actual results will determine how popular the bill is." I agree with that sentiment entirely, Andy Biggs, especially when it comes to who gets the actual tax cuts, which tax cuts are permanent and which tax cuts aren't permanent. Meanwhile, Senator Katie Britt just made up her own name for the bill, which is fun. So take a look at her post on X. "The rural health care crisis is an issue many Alabamians know far too well, thanks to the President of the United States signing the Working Family Tax Cuts Bill," which, come on, into law. "Alabama will receive much needed funding, technology, and support for rural hospitals." Actually, the opposite is gonna happen because of the cuts, nearly $1 trillion in cuts in Medicare fund. No, actually it's more than $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts. Rural hospitals stand to suffer as a result of those cuts. So the work requirements for Medicaid is what got a lot of the focus and a lot of the discourse that was critical of the big beautiful bill focused on the work requirements, but the cuts to Medicaid went beyond the work requirements. And so, this is how the Trump administration is telling Republicans to essentially market the bill. According to Politico, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told House Republicans that they should focus their messaging on the tax cuts. Leavitt also instructed Republicans to tell their voters about the increased child tax credit and employer child care tax credit. But Republicans are facing an uphill battle if a new CNN poll is really any indication. So let's get to the details of that poll. Americans say 61% to 39% that they oppose the spending bill overall. More expect the bill to hurt the economy than to help it. 51% to 29%, with the rest expecting it to make little difference. Those numbers are not good. Those numbers are pretty bad. There's more. So more expected to leave their family worse off than better off, 37% to 16%, with nearly half unsure or predicting they'll be largely unaffected. And Americans are right to oppose the bill, by the way, because according to the Congressional Budget Office, over the next decade, poorer Americans, those earning less than $23,750 annually, and who pay about $2,300 of that in federal taxes, will lose about $1,200 per year due to Medicaid changes and reductions in food assistance. And the second poorest 10% will lose $400 on average. Middle income households are expected to gain $800 to $1,200. Meanwhile, the law's tax cuts will benefit the richest 10% of Americans by about $13,600 per year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So look, first the substance of the bill, then I get back to the name. So a lot of people that voted for Trump, they grew up in an era where they've never had the Democratic or Republican Party ever deliver for them. And the establishment always tells them, oh yeah, we're for you guys. And then they come in and they never do anything for them, right? So Trump is one of the first populists, along with Bernie, to come out and say that they were against the establishment. It was a very smart politics, right? But then he's running into the same problem that Democrats run into. So he talked a good game about helping the average American, then you pass a bill and then we see it and it affects our lives, right? So you take from the average American, we've said this many times, the Medicaid cuts and snap cuts were around $1.1 trillion, which is almost identical to the amount of money that the people making above $500,000 a year get in tax cuts, $1.1 trillion. So that is a direct, forget every other part of the bill. They literally took from the neediest $1.1 trillion and they moved it to the richest people in the country.
Yep.
People making above $500,000 per year, right? So we all have eyes and ears. This is like Israel saying, oh no, there is no hunger or destruction in Gaza. Gaza's perfectly fine. This is like Joe Biden saying, no, Democrats saying Joe Biden is young and dynamic. He's in great shape, right? No, we all have eyes and ears, and all the propaganda in the world that they're used to mainstream media doing for them is not working anymore. So we see that this is a giant problem. And this is before the AI apocalypse comes. And so, and my sense of it is that the AI is going to wipe out a massive amount of jobs. People are going to be shocked at the number of jobs that are eliminated within the next 18 months.
Yeah, and driverless cars, automation, like all of these things compounding the issue.
Yeah, and so when those folks all of a sudden need unemployment, need Medicaid, need SNAP, they're gonna say, ha, there's nothing left. We gave it to the rich already. And then those people who voted for Trump, not at the extreme right, but in the edges and in the middle, are gonna realize, oh, we've been had, we've been took. It turns out he's just as establishment, if not more so. He's even more elitist, gave even more to the rich. He said he was gonna cut defense, he added 150 billion to defense. He said he was gonna stop the wars, and all he's done so far is more wars, attacking Iran, sinking a Venezuelan ship, Department of War, all this nonsense, right? So bottom line is, when you go back to the name, now they're trying to move it from BBB to BRB. That's the budget reconciliation bill that Anna explained to you guys. But you could move it to BBQ and it ain't gonna make any difference.
I don't know, that sounds delicious.
Okay, it does, but you can call it the barbecue bill, but at the end of the day, you can't eat it because they took the food stamps away.
Oh, that's a good point.
Right, so look, you can call it anything you like, but in the old days that would have worked. Why did it work? Because when Cheney said, you all have to call it enhanced interrogation, all of the mainstream press switched to enhanced interrogation. It was amazing, all in one fell swoop when the government ordered it. NBC, Associated Press, CNN, they all switched torture to enhanced interrogation.
Yeah.
And so,
God, it's so pathetic. You're right. Like the fact that the media like went along with it is so disgusting.
Exactly, and now online media is not going along with this stuff. Yeah, you've got your right wingers online. You got your podcasters are beginning to get wobbly on this, right? And those are the independent guys. But overall, everyone has a different opinion. And we're not gonna let you go, oh, it's BBQ now? Oh, I bet it's delicious. Yes, I'm for that and mac and cheese. No, you're not gonna fool people anymore. This thing's it's already a disaster. Oh, last part is that they told you that they were gonna reduce the deficit and they added $3.4 trillion to deficit to mainly in corporate subsidies. They added $18 billion in oil subsidies for no reason other than they're a large donor to Donald Trump. So this is the swamp. And then people are gonna see it, and when they do, 26 is gonna be brutal for Republicans under any name. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.